Let's start with the most basic question. What is Python? Python is a high-level programming language. It lets us write instructions that the computer can understand. But here's the thing. Think of Python as talking to your computer using simple English instead of complicated robot language. To see how simple it is, let's write the smallest Python program. First, you need to have Python installed on your system. You can go to the official website on python.org/downloads to download it based on whatever system you have, whether it's Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. Next, open your preferred IDE. Any IDE will work. VS Code, PyCharm, Sublime, Vim, and many more are good examples. After that, start with an empty file. Create a file called main.py, or any name you want. It just needs to end with the .py extension, because that tells your system that the file is a Python program. Right now, our program does nothing. So let's add the most common first line ever written. Print hello world. This tells the computer, show the text hello world. To execute it, just type python main.py on the terminal. Also in some IDEs, there's also a play button that automatically executes the Python file. You can use it if it's available. If not, just use the terminal command. You'll notice there aren't many special symbols or confusing syntax, just normal words. Now let's build on that. Python becomes powerful when you start storing information, which we do using variables. A variable is a place in memory that holds a value. Imagine boxes with labels. The label is the variable name. The thing inside the box is the value. To declare a variable, you need to give it a name and assign it a value using the syntax. Variable name equals value. It's like saying, I have a value and I want to give it a name so I can use it later in my program. Now let's create two variables called name and age. Python will instantly remember these values. Let's add more. Python supports different kinds of data: text, numbers, decimals, and true or false values. You already declared two data types: a string, which is basically text, or a sequence of characters, and a number. These are called data types. Think of them like different kinds of items you can put in boxes. Let's add three more variables. Create place temperature and is raining with the values Finland, 28.5, and true. You'll notice that a string is always wrapped in quotes. You can use either single or double quotes. Double quotes are often used in situations where you need to do string interpolation. If you're not familiar with it, it may look like gibberish at first, but it's actually quite simple, and I'll show you how later. In some other languages, the number, or commonly referred to as integer data type, has a range from -2 billion plus to 2 billion plus. But in Python, there is no such limit as long as your memory can handle it. Again, a decimal is simply a number with a decimal point. Pretty self-explanatory if you've taken basic math. And lastly, a Boolean only takes two values, either true or false. Now, there are also data types that works a bit different than the usual ones. I'll show you one called lists. A list is a collection. It can hold multiple values in a single variable. You can think of it like a shopping list. You have one piece of paper, but you can write many items on it. Each item has a position, starting from 0, so Python knows where to find it. To create a list, we will use the syntax square brackets. Here's an example. We declared a list called fruits with the values of apple, banana, and mango. To access a list, we use indexing. Python starts counting at 0. So the first item is at position 0, the second at 1, and so on. Think of your list as a row of mailboxes. Each mailbox has a number. Mailbox 0 has apple. Mailbox 1 has banana. Mailbox 2 has mango. If you want the banana, just go to mailbox 1. If we try to access an index that's outside the list's length, Python's interpreter will throw an error. If you're not familiar with an interpreter, it's basically a program that reads and executes your Python code line by line. It's a bit different with compiler that other languages use, but we're not going to talk about it in this video. Need design work but don't have the budget or time to hire a designer? Or maybe you do know design tools, but everything still takes forever? This is Lovart, an AI design agent that doesn't just generate images. It actually thinks and edits like a designer. Let me show you what I mean. I'm starting with a simple idea. I need a modern, minimal landing page hero for a SaaS product. Lovart instantly generates multiple layout options. But here's where it gets interesting. I'll click this headline and use TextEdit to rewrite it. I'm changing the wording, but notice how the font, spacing, and texture stay exactly the same. No broken typography, no redesign needed. Now the message fits my product perfectly. Next, let's say I want to revise an existing poster. I'll use Touch Edit to revise and replace details in a tech event design, then press Ctrl or Command on Mac and click this visual element. Tell Lovart what I want changed, and it updates only that part, not the entire image. I can make multiple precise edits in one go, adjust the focal object, refine the lighting, clean up the background, all without starting over. This feels less like prompting and more like directing a designer. Now I'm creating a social media post. Using edit elements, I can treat everything like real layers. I'll select the background and restyle it, then move this text block, change its font and color, and resize it for mobile. This isn't just image editing, it's layout control. Foreground, background, text, fully editable, and perfect for fast content production. Lovart also lets me switch between different AI models depending on the vibe I want. For this visual, I'll try Nano Banana Pro for a bold, experimental look, then compare it with GPT image for something cleaner and more realistic. Same idea, totally different creative directions, all done in minutes. And Lovart doesn't stop at images. I can turn these visuals into short motion clips for hero sections, reels, or ads, and even generate 3D assets if I want more depth. Everything happens inside one workflow, with no exporting and no jumping between tools. What makes Lovart different is speed and control. You go from idea to multiple concepts, to precise edits, to ready-to-post visuals, all in a single session. That means more content, better consistency, and way less time spent tweaking designs. If you want to try this yourself, check out Lovart AI. The link is in the description. And that's also where you'll find the exact setup I used in this video. Now, back to the video. Now let's make the computer think. We will use an if statement to run code only when a condition is true. It's like telling a friend, if it's raining, bring an umbrella. Let's start by declaring a Boolean variable called isRaining and setting it to true. Next, we add an if statement. The syntax is simple. Write if and then the condition. This means if the variable is raining results to true, Python will print bring an umbrella. Now, what if we want to check another condition? We can add another statement, but instead of using the keyword if, we use elif, which stands for else if. What this does is create a branch. When the condition inside the first if statement isn't satisfied, Python will check the condition in the elif statement and run it if it's true. Here's an example. Let's change the isRaining to false and create another variable called isSunny and set it to true. Python evaluates the if condition first. If it is true, it immediately executes that block and skips the remaining branches. If the if condition is false, Python moves on to the elif condition and evaluates it. And if this condition is true, that block is executed. Now we can see that the terminal displays wear sunglasses because the first condition is false and the second condition is true. Now, what if both conditions evaluate to false? Enter else statement. If none of the if or else if conditions are true, Python will finally run the else block. This way, the program chooses only one branch to execute, depending on which condition is satisfied. Now that you have learned how to write if-else statements, let's keep going. Sometimes you may want to repeat an action multiple times, and for that, we use a loop. There are multiple loops and ways to iterate in Python, but we'll keep it simple and focus on the most basic one, the for loop. Imagine someone says, write this sentence 5 times. Instead of copy-pasting, Python can do it for you automatically. The for keyword is a keyword in Python that indicates the start of a for loop. Next is the I variable, which is a temporary variable that stores values and changes with each iteration. You can name it whatever you want. Then we have enRange with the value of 5. Range is a built-in Python function that returns a sequence of numbers based on the parameter, in this case 5. It's exclusive, meaning the number 5 itself is not included in the sequence. So the function returns the number 0 to 4. We will discuss functions in more detail shortly. The colon just shows that a for loop is a block. Let's add the expression that will run 5 times based on the number input on the range function. When this code runs, the terminal output will be 5. Python is easy text. Another useful convention in Python is that if a variable in a for loop is not needed, an underscore is commonly used instead. Now, what if there's a situation that we want to use it? The variable inside a for loop keeps track of the current iteration, basically which number the loop is on. We can use it for numbering, calculations, or even referencing items in a list. For example, let's write another for loop. We're going to print the iteration values from range 5, but you'll notice something strange. We have a character F besides the string quotes and used curly braces inside the string. This is called string interpolation. It's a way of providing dynamic values in a string. Inside the curly braces are just normal Python expression. It could be a variable, an arithmetic operation, and many more. In this case, we used an arithmetic operation. When the code runs, this will print Python is easy number 1, Python is easy number 2, and so on. Now you might ask, why isn't it 2, 3, 4, and so on if we add 1 on each iteration? As I explained earlier, the range function returns the values 0 to 4, not 1 to 5. It's exclusive, meaning it doesn't include the number you pass in. but it does return a sequence of numbers whose length matches that number. Oh, there's another cool thing. You can combine this with lists. Instead of just numbers, you can use the loop variable to reference items in a list. For example, let's declare a for loop, but instead of using range, we'll use the fruits list we created earlier. We used another built-in function provided by Python called len. It takes a sequence like a string, list, or other data types as input and returns the number of items in that sequence. Think of it like asking, how many things are in this box? And Python counts them for you automatically. Remember how we use indexing to access items in a list? We can use the iteration variable of a loop to access elements from the first item to the last in the list. But Python also has a cleaner way to do this without using indexes, and that's by iterating directly over the list. You don't even need I unless you want the number. Here, we name the iteration variable fruit, and instead of using range function to control how many times the loop runs, we use the list itself. In Python, you can loop over any sequence inside a for loop. When we print the value of fruit, it automatically takes the value of each item in the list, one by one. Using string interpolation with f-strings lets us drop the variable right inside the text. And when we run the code, we can see the result immediately. All right, so far we've been using for loops, which run a set number of times. But sometimes we don't know in advance how many times we want something to repeat. That's where the while loop comes in. A while loop keeps running as long as a condition is true. Once the condition becomes false, the loop stops. Let's try making a while loop. First, let's start by declaring a variable called count with a value of 0. We want to add a condition in the loop to determine if it should run another iteration. Now, let's add the expressions inside the loop. Here's what's happening. Count equals 0 just sets where we start. Then, while count is less than 5, is the condition that tells the loop to keep going while count is less than 5. And count plus equals 1 bumps the counter up each time, otherwise the loop would run forever. Think of it like waiting for a cake to bake. You keep checking the oven until it hits 5 minutes. Once it does, you stop checking. The while loop is super flexible. You can use it to repeat something until a certain condition happens, like asking a user for input until they finally give a valid answer. And to see that in action, let's declare a variable called user input and assign it an empty string, just 2 double quotes with nothing inside. This variable will store the user's input. Next, we want a condition that checks if the user's input is not equal to yes. If it isn't, the program will go back and continue to the next iteration. But how do we get the user's input? We'll use another built-in function in Python called input. Here, the loop will keep asking the user until they type yes. It won't stop if they type yes or yes, because everything in programming is case sensitive. It's like asking someone, "Are you ready?" over and over until they nod. You don't know how many times you'll need to ask. That's why a while loop works best. If you're not sure which loop to use a for loop when you know exactly how many times to repeat, and a while loop when you want to repeat based on a condition. Both can use counters, variables, and messages that change. Also, you've been hearing about functions, but what exactly is a function? What's a parameter? What's an argument? And what's a return value? Let's go through them one by one. A function is a reusable block of code that you can call anytime. Think of it like a button. You press it, and it does something. We actually used a function in the very first line of our code. Do you know which one it was? It's the print function. That's right. Functions are everywhere in our code. Print, range, len, input. They are all functions. Under the hood, a lot of code is running inside them. Now, how can we write our own function? To write our own function, we use the def keyword, then the function name, parentheses, and a colon. Inside the function, we put the code we want it to do. For example, this creates a function called greet. Right now, it doesn't do anything until we call it. You call a function by using its name followed by parentheses. When we call greet with parentheses, it prints hello world. Pretty neat, right? Now you might wonder, why not just print it directly? Using a function makes it simple and reusable. We can do the same thing many times without rewriting the code. In this example, we just used a simple print function. But what if we have a piece of code that's 20 lines long? We wouldn't want to write it again and again, right? That's when functions really come in handy. Now, functions can also take parameters. A parameter is like a placeholder for information you give to the function when you call it. Think of it like a button that asks for a name. When you press it, you tell it who to greet. Here, name is the parameter. When we call the function, we give it an argument, which is the actual value. Let's call the greet function and pass a value to it. Can you guess what will be the result when you run the code? If you're correct, great job. If you're still confused, the parameter is just an empty slot inside the function. and the argument is the actual value we pass in. In this case, the string Kyle and Python learner are the arguments. Functions can also give back a result using a return value. Think of it like a vending machine. You press a button, and it gives you something in return. Let's declare a function called add that takes two parameters, adds them, and returns the sum. Here, add takes two parameters, a and b, adds them together, and returns the result. We can store it in a variable or use it directly like this. This will print 8 in the terminal. Instead of just printing inside the function, we now have a value we can reuse anywhere. Python gives us a lot of built-in functions, but we're not going to cover all of them. I'll leave it up to you as an assignment to look them up and get familiar with them. You've learned about variables, lists, loops, and functions, but Python can do something even more powerful. Object-oriented programming, or OOP for short. OOP is a way of organizing code using objects, which are like containers that hold both data and the functions that work with that data. Think of a car. A car has properties like color, brand, and speed, and methods like start, stop, and honk. OOP lets us represent things like cars in our code in the same way. For example, let's create a simple class called car. A class is like a blueprint for objects. In this case, it's cars. Then we declare a function called double_init double_, which takes parameters just like a normal function we saw earlier. But this one is special. It's called the constructor, and it runs automatically when we create a new car. That means as soon as we make a car object, Python immediately runs this function to set up the car's brand and color, without us having to call it manually. Don't worry if this still feels a little tricky. You'll understand it even better when we actually create a car shortly. And also, did you notice something strange? Self is a special keyword in Python. It refers to the exact object you're creating from the class. Think of it like saying, this particular car I'm working on right now. If you make two cars, self helps Python know which car you're talking to. Every time you create a new car object, self tells Python which object's data to read or change. So when you write self color, Python understands, use the color of this car, not some other one. The other parameters, like brand and color, are just values you pass in when you create the object. They only exist for a short moment while the init method is running. Their job is simple. Take those values and store them inside the object using self. That's why you'll see self as the first parameter in every method inside a class. It's how Python keeps track of which object is doing the action. Let's add another method called drive inside the class. For context, we're going to call functions inside a class methods. Now let's make a car and see it happen. We called the car class like a function with the values Toyota and red and assigned it to the variable mycar. The values Toyota and red are assigned to self.brand and self.color, respectively. The order of the values is important because it must match the order of the parameters in the constructor. Car class returns an object, which means mycar is a variable that holds an object. We can then call the drive function into it. When run, the output shows the red Toyota is driving. Each time we create a new car object, it can have different properties. Let's create another one. Let's say the brand property, this will be Honda, and the color property will be blue. Then we'll call drive method again in the new object. Can you guess what the output will be? Yes, it's the blue Honda is driving. It's like making real-life toy cars. Each toy car can have a different color and brand, but they all share the same blueprint. In short, OOP lets us reuse code and organize programs better. We can add more method like stop method or honk method, and every car object can use them without rewriting code. For a real example of OOP, let's say we are developing a bank app. We can have an account class that stores the balance and account number and lets you deposit or withdraw. We've only scratched the surface of OOP. We've learned how to write classes and create objects, but there's so much more like inheritance, encapsulation, and polymorphism. We'll cover those in another video. For now, I just wanted to introduce you to the idea of objects in Python, since they are used all the time, especially in web frameworks like Django or FastAPI. And that wraps up today's lesson. We've covered a lot: variables, data types, lists, loops, functions, and even a simple introduction to object-oriented programming. To make it easier to remember everything, we have a cheat sheet for all Nova Plus members that shows quick examples of each concept. It's linked in the description. Become a Nova Plus member to get access to more exclusive cheat sheets and playbooks in the future. We will soon discuss more topics like this, including Java and other languages and concepts, so subscribe to stay tuned. Well, that's it for now, Novas. Thank you for watching.